This is one of the best astrophotos I ever taken, and this is my first one. In this video you will see how I went from this to this, how much money I spent on gear, and how the more equipment I bought, the less I actually enjoyed astrophotography. So this is the story of my astrophoto journey. I looked through a telescope for the first time when I was 4 or 5 years old, but I don't remember anything, so let's just skip that part. I took a few photos in 2021, but in 2022 my mom randomly showed me a news article about the Perseus meteor shower. And that moment completely changed everything. I started observing every single night. My setup was a cheap telescope and a Galaxy S7. One night I decided to observe some random space stuff at 4 AM. This is the moon photo I took. Looks shady, but that night felt magical. At some point I discovered something called stacking. Basically you take dozens of terrible photos and somehow combine them into one. I also tried deep sky astrophotography using only my phone. But in 2023 something changed. Standing outside in -10 degrees suddenly felt less fun than sitting inside and playing computer games. I also become a bit too lazy to deal with all the equipment, so most of the time I just took lazy astrophotos on my phone. But sometimes I still use the telescope. For example, this comet. And then another $900 disappeared. I upgraded to a Galaxy S22 and bought a Heritage 115p telescope, and surprisingly, the interest came back a little, especially from astrophotography, just the S22 and the sky. But the interest faded again, and for about a year almost nothing happened. Until one day me and my brother had a genius idea. What if we bought a DSLR and tried to sell astrophotos? So we got a camera and started experimenting. These were some of the first astrophotos we took with the DSLR. At that time we didn't even have an equatorial mount yet. Just a tripod, a camera and a lot of enthusiasm. At the end of 2024 we finally bought a motorized equatorial mount. And the first thing we photographed with it was the Orion Nebula. Honestly, I was running purely on dopamine that night. Here are a few more photos from later nights, this time without the moon. But sometime later we started shooting more with camera lenses. There is a simple rule in astrophotography. The heavier your equipment is, the less you want to use it. And a 115mm telescope is a pretty heavy thing. So instead we bought two old lenses, a 135 Vivitar and a 200 Soligur, and also another DSLR, S7D. With that setup we took photos like these, but of course we decided it still wasn't enough, so we spent another $75 on a Sigma Aspherical 28. That's how we started taking photos of the Milky Way like this, but as usual the interest slowly dropped again. And guess what? Nobody bought the photos.